Welcome to Woodturning with Dick. I've got a lovely chunk of bog oak here. It's been under my workshop bench for some time. I don't know what to make of it yet. I'm literally at the stage of letting it talk to me. I've talked about letting wood talk to you in the past. And this lovely bark over the side here. It's very soft, very brittle. There's some 5,000-year-old woodworm in there. There is a nice big crack up the side here. There's this lovely little knot here. Beautiful, where the wood's dried and it's shrunk and it's misshapen. A wider topped piece with the natural edge on top. A lot of this will come off. It is incredibly brittle. If I just get a hammer and show you, you can feel it's like sponge. It's sort of very easily breaks off. I'm going to take a lot of this very loose bark off, then find my centre point, then stick a forcing a bit down through the middle here, just to give me enough to hang on to with my screw chuck with a couple of screws. Let's see what's under this lot. And the grain in the bog oak should be quite splendid. Lovely. I'm not going to even bother cutting the corners off. I think I'm just going to do that all very slowly on the lathe and see what comes of it. It's actually a fairly light piece of bog oak by comparison to other bog oak I've worked with. But no, just generally the density of it is quite light. We'll see. I had to trim the bottom off so it would actually fit on the lathe. I could have used the other lathe, which is slightly bigger, but I'd already put the screw chuck in for this one. So yeah, just trim that down on the bandsaw and it now fits. So, without further ado, I now pronounce you ready to turn. There's some gorgeous grain pattern here emulating out, and on the other side, which is masked by this and this at the moment. I do want to take this out, and obviously this crack is going to be an issue. It runs from here all the way around the bottom, just round to the other side. So I'm not going to be able to put any sort of innie. And an outie, I think, will squash it and put my bowl too far off centre. My pot. This is the wood talking to you, to me. It's really going to determine the way I'm going to shape it. Let's just turn and get this taken out. I might flute it up like that a little bit later. So we're going to have a nice, long, deep vase. Right, let's get on with that. I have been thinking overnight on this. I've got this rot here, which I'm going to plaster with some super glue to soak in, to stabilise some of the softer bits. Not that it is terribly soft, but you know, it'll darken it up a bit with the super glue. There's an awful lot of flex. Can you see that? Both sides. Turning the inside is going to be a bit of a challenge. I thought about putting bow ties in, but that sounds like an awful lot of effort. So I think, actually, I'm going to put what I'm going to call biscuits. One about here, just where that wood meets, and try and get a uniformity to it. So one there between the middle of those two. I'll measure that up in a minute. somewhere about here. So you've got 3 biscuits. Now, I've got a nice piece of laburnum, which I think is, well, it's perfect. It's the right size. It's not too split or cracked. And if I send that down with a Forstner bit in here, carefully on the drill at the right angle, turn this down, chin them off, put them in, not too deep. They won't go all the way through into the centre of the bowl, because on the inside of the bowl, I'm going to fully gild it on the inside. A natural edge at the top, these biscuits on the outside won't be too busy, and that gold reflecting in the middle, you wait till you see that. You think some of the gilding's impressive on some of the previous videos, you wait till you see a vessel like this, fully gilt on the inside. It's a sight to see. So, let me get on with that. Billie Jean was not my lover. I'm on video. Right. In hindsight, I should have set up a slightly firmer cradle for this below the drill stand, but it was all a bit kind of bodge and first time doing, so it's worked reasonably well. The very start is a bit dodge, but the main bore is nice smooth sides. Same on this one. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn down the biscuits and glue them in, and then return this outside down 3, 4 or 4 mil, 5 mil in places. So the whole thing is going to be a little bit smaller. I'm going to keep this top edge the same thickness, but it's going to flute down a little bit more. And this side's pretty good all in, actually. Quite a thin biscuit there. So hopefully, all going well, as long as I don't take that down too much and go through the biscuit there, we should be fine. Pleased with that. That's going to look pretty smart, I hope. So I've just sanded that using the block, a bit of sandpaper in between, just to get that completely uniform. There's a 28mm Forstner bit for the side of the bowl. I'm going to cut that up into several longish pieces that fit the holes, and that should slide in with a bit of glue, brace it in, and let that go off. So let's crack on. I think that's worked reasonably well. Got some to take down on the bottom corner. And down there, that little gap there was where the Forstner bit jiggled around a bit as I was drilling. But otherwise, these look nice and clean. And that will come off as I swoop that corner down. Let's get that turned down to the same, everything at the same level and the final shape before sanding. Then I'll consider how we're going to mount that. That has worked extremely well. I'm quite liking this. It's quite attractive and it has a purpose. There's a small gap down this side, but I'll fill that with bog oak dust and super glue. I am going to dig out this white from these holes and fill it with bog oak dust. Same with this one here, which is a long ways wood wormhole. These I'll leave as is. No gaps whatsoever on that one, absolutely perfect. Perfect. And a small gap down this side. This soak with some super glue, as mentioned before. Clean out these cracks. Pull this out. Put a bit of sandpaper in there and just bring it off so it cleans off that burring over. Bottom to be determined. Right, let's get some sanding. I'll come back to you once I've done a bit of sanding and a bit of filling with super glue and dust. I'm chuffed to bits. I've dug out the woodworm holes just with a fine spike, squeezed some super glue down there, quickly rubbed over with some sandpaper, taking the sandings down into the hole, and then re-super glue over the top. Apologies, I should have recorded that and showed you how I did that, but I'll do that next time. I've got a bit of bog oak to show you the house, but it's quite simple. Really pleased with the way these have turned out. They are absolutely spectacular. This is the very first time I've done this, and I can't really see a mistake. I haven't learnt from my errors, I've just learnt, which is fantastic. I have stabilised this with super glue. I've poured it all over, I've squished it all in. It is a lot firmer than it was. Some of the dust has got into the wee cracks there, but once the sander sealer's on that, that'll colour up similar to this. It'll still be visible, but you know, it's livable with. And this side's just as nice. Lovely, perfect circles, somewhat like knots, somewhat like buttons. Biscuits. I'll do the sander sealing. Oh no, okay, fine. Talk me into it. I'll do the sander sealing now because I do really want to see what this looks like once it's got the sander sealer on. So let's do that. Forgive the gloves. I've run out of my little blue and all my cream ones as a temporary measure while some are on order. I've got these lovely things. Just stops the sander sealer getting on the skin. It's nasty stuff. Huzzah. Can you see this rough bit up here? That's all bark. I've left it on there so when I was sanding it wouldn't round over on the natural edge. But a lot of that is coming off later in the video. No point in putting a lot of sander sealer on that, but I will put some on. The perfect colour, that laburnum. Works really nice with the dark brown tones in the bog oak. And the woodworm holes, which you can see if you look carefully. Tell you what, bog oak does sap it up. Here, it's going to be fun. You watch what happens to that later. It's going to be pretty. So pleased with those. When I mentioned to Lenore that I was doing these, she suggested turn the biscuits and then turn a bowl in the biscuits and then implant them. I did consider it because then she'd gild that bowl in the sides. So you'd have these like golden buttons down the side. But I think the wood works better this way and then the gilding on the inside will work better. Aside from that, doing a bowl and putting it in so you've got nice sharp edges, it's not going to tally up to the sides, it's just not going to work like that, unfortunately. But the idea was there. Anyway, gives you an idea. I'll probably give it another coat of sander sealer once I've denibbed it. That's only finished to 320 grit. I will finish it to a higher grit later on. Next job is to turn it round to do the inside. But before I can do that, I need some sort of chuck grip on the bottom. And I certainly can't put an innie in it, as I like to call it, a recess, because of that dirty great crack down the bottom. And even though I've got the biscuit there, still not going to be strong enough to put an expandable chuck in there. So I think I'm going to, I've flattened that off nice and flat. I've got a nice strong bit of lacewood. You might recognise this from a previous video. It's a bit of overkill on size. I'll trim it down, but I'm going to clamp and glue that on there, then trim this down and then turn my chuck grip into that. Hopefully the tight bond will hold it well enough for me to allow me to dig out the middle. Now, if I'm really clever, this has already got a chuck grip on the bottom. If I can get the bog oak piece that I'm doing at the moment dead center on there, then I might be able to just trim the edge off of that and reuse that nice perfectly formed chuck grip. Let's find dead center, because my clamp won't fit this. So all I'm going to do is rest it on the table here, put my glue on, center it, leave the chuck on so I've got a nice flat top, and then put the weight on top of the chuck nice and centralized, leave that for a good half an hour, leave it for 24, maybe slightly longer hours before I actually turn it round and put it on to dig the middle out. Right, that'll do for that. So, yeah, I need an in-betweeny line in between those two lines to help me guide it into the right place. Some people use hot glue. Don't fancy my chances with hot glue with something like this. That amount of weight on that tiny little disc there. No tar. Rather use Titebond and wait the 24 hours to full dry time. I need something up on top there to push down, something nice and heavy. What have I got? How about a toolbox full of nuts and bolts? That'll do. Just try not to knock it over when I'm doing other things while this is drying. Perfect. Right, let's put me glue on. Good splurge. Good splurge of Titebond. Switch that round there. A lot of it's going to spill out the sides, but salivate. Oh, one thing I forgot. Hang on. I don't really want the glue squidging up my crack. Sorry, shouldn't laugh at my own jokes, but there's no one else here to laugh at them, so... Electrical tape. Enough there to cut that in half. This is to cover my crack, to stop the glue going up it. Because one does not want glue in one's crack. Perfect. It goes. Nice bit of hand pressure down on, giving it a twist. Just till it starts to stick. Squidge it in the right place, get it nice and central. That's as good as it's going to get. Toolbox full of nuts and bolts. That'll do. Staying in place. Lovely. Come back to that in a couple of days. Well, no, I'll take the toolbox off in half an hour, but come back to that, to doing the piece in a couple of days, I think. All right, crack on with something else. Well, it's either going to blow off at the very first touch of the chisel. I mean, that glue is supposedly stronger than wood, and I've done worse. But it's quite a small area of glue holding that to that lacewood. It's either going to blow off the lathe as soon as I touch it with a chisel, or even before I touch it with a chisel. Let's turn it on. It's on its lowest speed. I got to be honest, I don't hold much hope. I was considering putting a Forstner bit down through here to get me started on the middle of the bowl, but I didn't, again, fancy the risk of a catch on the Forstner bit. So, very gentle strokes with the chisel. I'll put it on slow to start with, so you can see the first touchings, and then I'll speed it up. And hopefully it doesn't blow off the lathe, because there's a nice lot of work on the outside there. It'd be a shame to be ruined. Right, here's startup. Not finished yet. I'm going to lay some wax over the top of this just to keep it all nice and dark like the rest of the piece. And then it's off to the gilder. So do bear with, because I do want you to see that glow in the middle. Piece number 8, 1, 1.